Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 60. I'm Enigmius and today we're so close to being done. I had actually intended and hoped to have the ship ready for a bit of a cruise today, but things took a little bit longer than I thought. You'll see how close we are when we get to the end of it. It was just one of those cases where I could kind of try and rush it to get to that stage, or just show you what we've got, and then the next episode will be a little bit more action. The main thing that I wanted to show you guys is there's two sides to this ship right now. We're looking at one side, which kind of shows, in some ways, the progress, the charting of the progress that we've made in certain stages of refining the build, and then the other side will give you an idea, a little bit, of what it's going to look like when it's closer to completion. So you can see here we've got a lot of white paint over here and down here and up here, and then the blue, which is the primer sort of texture. I call it primer because you basically spray it on and it's blue, and then you spray it with another color and it's a matte version of that color without any kind of detail. So that's why I call it primer, in case anyone is wondering. You can see we've done a little bit more detailing in this area of the hull, kind of changing things around a little bit so that where it's angular, it makes a little bit more sense to be angular. In the last episode, we were looking at some of the things, the angles and such, where they didn't quite come together smoothly. And I'm quite often okay with that, but in the process of kind of working on the ship and tweaking this and refining that, there's always this part of me that's kind of thinking of what we can do to get rid of it. So I'm okay with leaving it if that's the best that I can come up with, but if I can get rid of it and do something a little bit better in the transitions, then that's what I'm more inclined to do. And that's what I ended up with here. Is I redid this whole section in here, kind of pulled it forward a little bit so that things come together a little bit more smoothly, and then we extended the hull outward a little bit here. It used to be sort of flat in this section here, and we added this detail sticking out from that section. Again, just making it a little bit more 3D, making it a little bit more robust in the middle. I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. And then one of the main things that we spoke about in the last episode was getting rid of those little feet, the little pods that had our hover engines and our booster and our landing pad. And that's exactly what we've done. We made them beefier, definitely I think a little bit more suited to the rest of the ship itself. You look at it, whether you love the design, whether you love the shape or you hate it, it's less, it doesn't stand out in a negative way as much as the little pods did. So that's kind of one of the things. And again, after I did this section here and got it all taken care of and was happy with it, I went and added these little sections here that just kind of curve it in towards the middle a little bit, and have a slightly less bulky profile on the ends when you're looking at it this way. You've just got this sort of end piece here, whereas previously it was just this big fat wide sort of thing. You can see actually this would have been one side and it extends all the way out to here. It's just I felt it was too wide. So this is a little bit more refined than previously. I still have to do the underside. It's not going to take much. There's only so much room that I have to work with. But to me, when I look at this, it's just too flat relative to what's going on throughout the rest of the ship. So we're going to take care of that. We're going to look at the underside and make some changes. And we've basically finished off the back end. And then this is, again, one of those cases where if I could have done it a little bit more smoothly, I would have in the transition. But we've got this exposed sort of flat section, and again, I'm okay with it. If this is the way that it stays in the finished version of the ship, I'm okay with that. If I could have made it fit together a little bit better with the lower section, I would have. That's kind of the thing that I was thinking about as I was putting it together. You can see we've got some detail here with the angles and such coming together in a way, again, that I'm happy with. In this case, I feel that's an appropriate detail to have coming back off of these leg sort of things. And then up top, we're going to pull out the drone. Try that again. There we go. You can see I've added more space up top so that we could add more thrusters. And once we actually get the hover engines on these legs set up properly, we'll be able to take this thing out for a rip and see whether or not this is enough in terms of forward thrust for this thing to maneuver across. any landscape we should come across, ideally, is what the goal would be for this thing. We've got all kinds of room on the back end here to add thrusters if we need them, so there's no excuse to get stuck on, you know, anything, because we don't have enough thrust to get over it. So that's something that we're going to be keeping in mind as part of the testing. So we're going to run it over some pretty rigorous terrain and see if it can withstand the entire process of pushing it over, up and over anything that we come across. So that's going to be one of the things that we'll be looking at when we do the shakedown. But for now, we've got enough room for it. We still need to add lateral thrusters so that we can do the side-to-side movement, and reverse thrusters so that we can slow down, stop, and move backwards. Again, we've got lots of space for these things. I'm not worried at all about being able to find room to add these things. It's just a question of doing them. And then up here is a little bit more detailing, and we're starting to get a little bit more into the actual finished side of things. I put this sort of ridge down the top. Again, it was a case where I looked at it and I was mostly okay with the way it used to be when it was just basically flat along the top. And then I thought we could afford to put a little bit more detail up here, and if we do it right, so that it's not too busy, it could end up looking kind of badass. And I think that we managed to get it towards the badass side of the spectrum. Once it's all painted and textured, of course, it'll look a little bit different than it does now with the sort of gray metal and the white paint. There's a little bit of a discrepancy. And if you come down here, you can see that it's it looks like it goes way down into the hull of the ship when really it's just black paint a couple of blocks in. So you've got that sort of faux shadow effect, making it look deeper than it is, and just this ridged kind of thing coming across the top, which I'm, again, quite happy with. If it stays that way, I'm happy with it. I don't feel the need to change it at all. Now this is the finished sort of side, which is to say I painted it the way I had it in my mind, and I'm not entirely certain if we're going to keep it this way, but again, it's one of those things, if it doesn't change, we'll be okay with it. We've used the regular metal paneling, except for where we've got a gun, in which case I used the sort of textured metal where the gun is mounted. It kind of looks a little bit different. It doesn't necessarily draw at the eye, unless, of course, now we're talking about it and we're looking directly at it. You can see the difference between the shiny metal and the textured metal, but it's the kind of thing that it's a pretty subtle detail, and it works for me. We've got the regular dark gray, that's the natural color that this texture comes with, and then we've got the light gray, that's not white, that's actually light gray, and then down here we've got more of the natural gray that the texture comes with. So we could, if we wanted to make things a little bit lighter somewhere around here, we could use white in addition to the two shades of gray. I don't even know if we're going to keep it gray. For some reason I feel like the whole design of this ship deserves better than just shades of gray. That's the thing that's in the back of my mind when I'm kind of deciding whether or not I like this. But at the same time, we're kind of limited in terms of the colors that we have available to us. So we'll see. I don't want it garish, I don't want it gaudy, but I also don't want to look at it and think, wow, what a disappointment that paint job is relative to everything else that went into the ship. Functionally, we've got our artillery turret, very important. I expect for an artillery turret mounted in this position on a ship built this way to not survive especially well. I expect to have to replace it and or repair it on a regular basis. So we're going to make at least a couple of extras, and we're going to keep them in storage in the ship in case we do have to repair it or replace it in the field. We've got minigun turrets down here. We used to have the little sort of detail like we've got here, down here, and I realized that this was kind of a really good spot for minigun turrets to deal with ground-based threats. You know, the fauna that could be coming after us for whatever reason is nice down low to the ground and aren't going to be wasting a ton of ammunition shooting at things way up in the sky, because in terms of the vertical reach they have kind of a limited ability to do that. We've got another minigun turret right here that gives us slightly better coverage so that this guy isn't having to protect the entire side of the ship. This one's able to help it out and reach certain areas that this one might be struggling to get, and vice versa. And then we've got missile turrets, missile launcher, and another missile launcher, and a plasma launcher. So We've got some diversity in terms of the guns, largely prompted by the change to the rules, so that now you can only have 4 of any particular kind of turret on a ship. And then once we get this other side textured and painted, then we'll put the mirror image of these guns on the other side, so that whatever you see here will be on the other side as well. And that will be our hover vessel's weapon complement. I'm not necessarily opposed to adding more weapons, but it's just a question of whether or not I would have the space to do so. And I guess I should mention that I raised a little platform here for the plasma turret, just so that it can fire forward a little bit easier without shooting into the back of this guy. That was kind of important, and when we carry it over here, we're going to extend this platform so that the other plasma turret has the same thing. And that, in a nutshell, is the ship. So the hull design is basically done. When I think about the hull design, the only thing that I have left to do, that I absolutely must do, is get the hover engines and the boosters and all that other stuff sorted on these guys here. And then we finish painting, texturing, doing all that other stuff. We've got a few details left to do inside, mostly in the along the lines of shoring things up, making sure that things are well protected. We've got to add a little bit of storage space for weapons and ammunition, probably food as well, and then the interior will be done, and then we'll take it out. So guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed, in the next episode, this guy will be headed out for a shakedown. We're going to take it out for a rip around Empyrion and see how it does against some points of interest that still have turrets remaining on them. The 2 that we already cleared with the bomber, I think we did a pretty thorough job of clearing the turrets, but we're going to double check as part of the process of shaking this guy down. We're going to go around and make sure that that's the case, and then we'll be on to the next build. We've got one more build guaranteed while we're on Empyrion of a small ship kind of variety. We're not going to be building a capital vessel. It'll be either a small vessel or a hover vessel. I haven't completely decided yet, and we'll go from there. So if you want to be notified when I add that next video, easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media, of course. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.